Welcome, everybody, to the Ring Generals podcast. I am Nenad. Alongside me is Easy Eric Santos.
Cooking guys.
And, of course, the RKJ Man.
Let's talk that talk, y'all. Hypocritical Nick. I hope Jericho was comfy last Wednesday.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about on this podcast. This is a three-way podcast in the way of not only do we have three guys in the podcast talking, but we're talking about all three topics the Ring Generals cover: pro wrestling, boxing, and MMA. We're going to start the podcast talking about AEW's Blood and Guts match, the reaction from the pro wrestling world, and what we thought about the match itself and the winners, and certain circumstances that happened during the match as well. We will then travel to the boxing realm and the Canelo Alvarez, Joe Saunders fight. We'll discuss that, the crowd, and Canelo's legacy and what he should do next after a big win. And then we will move to end the podcast with our usual UFC preview. We are going to preview UFC 262, headlined by Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler for the vacant lightweight championship that was let go by Khabib's retirement. But guys, let's start. Let's go pro wrestling. We had a big match this past Wednesday on AEW Dynamite. It was kind of a mini pay-per-view card, and it was headlined by Blood and Guts, the Pinnacle versus the Inner Circle. The Inner Circle actually acting as faces in this match compared to the Pinnacle acting as heels. Originally, obviously, last year in March 2020, before the pandemic started, we were supposed to have a Blood and Guts match where the Inner Circle were heels and they were facing the Face Elite. That got canceled because they didn't think they could properly do it. And then now, over a year later, we finally have the Blood and Guts match. So I'll toss it to you guys. Eric, what were your first thoughts, or what are your thoughts on the Blood and Guts match that did happen between the Pinnacle and the Inner Circle?
Well, just to brush off all the critics and the opinions of the insiders of pro wrestling trying to crap on the Blood and Guts match, I thought I was entertained. Sure, there were moments where I felt like they had some really good spots during the commercial breaks. You know how they always do the picture-in-picture stuff? I feel like they should have not done the picture-in-picture stuff because I felt like there were some really good parts in the match. And so I'm not going to say it ruined it, but it kind of lost its flavor when I saw it. Maybe for the fans who are sitting in attendance, they might see that otherwise because they got to see it, themselves. The match itself, I thought it was a pretty good match. Obviously, Blood and Guts is supposed to be another name for War Games. But you know what? I think just the match itself, the cage structure looked really nice. I thought that was supposed to be a lot different from the usual War Games that you would see from WCW and WWE, which we see in NXT now. So I liked how they kind of made it a lot more different. I think they delivered as far as the blood content goes. I mean, there's a reason why there's a name that says Blood and Guts. I mean, come on, you got to live by the name for it. So expect it to be having some bumps in there and going to be a bloody brawl match. But I think when it comes down to the match, like the Pinnacle and the Inner Circle, I thought they did good. I thought they delivered. Jake Hager went out there and dominated Jericho and Santana Ortiz. MJF did a good job of playing the heel role. They were going back and forth, and then it felt like the Inner Circle, they were getting it looks like they were going to get the victory until at the very end, MJF, he was going to throw Jericho off the cell, which he actually did. And I think a lot of people are going to be, criticizing how he fell, saying that where he fell, it was like this pad, right? Was it like a pad or was it like a cushion? I guess it was. But apparently there was wood underneath it. I'm not sure if you guys saw that, but I saw there was a little bit of piece of wood at the bottom. Still, at the same time, I felt like even if you take that, I still think it's still kind of, dangerous. Yeah. You probably could still get knocked out either way. But I thought the match itself was pretty good. Anybody saying that it's bad is because these are just people who love NXT and they love the War Games match. So this is coming from them. So it's almost like you're going to get 50-50. We're going to say, oh, well, we got the War Games, from NXT. That's a lot better. Oh, no, we got Blood and Guts. So you're going to be seeing that from both sides. So I think as far as Blood and Guts go, hopefully this will not be the last because hopefully we get to see something like that on the pay-per-view this time.
Yeah.
Not for free. But I understand why they did it for free, because this is something that they promised last year. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to do something like that in the future. So stay tuned.
So RKJ Man, I think Eric brought up a lot of points that you were talking about before the podcast started. So I'll give it to you next. Your thought on Blood and Guts, and Eric also mentioned something. He said that this wasn't a pay-per-view match. I know you had some thoughts on that. So just tell us what you thought about Blood and Guts and give us kind of the pros and cons.
Yeah. So first of all, the matchup was good. I don't really have a lot of complaints about the matchup. I think Sammy Guevara looked like a badass. And just the spots he was doing was amazing. I believe he did a Spanish fly. He was using the chairs. He was doing all these things that were cool. Santina and Ortiz, they seemed fantastic. Chris Jericho was choking people out with barbed wire, his baseball bat and everything like that. So it was pretty brutal, and I like it. It's blood and guts. What do we expect? I mean, I heard a report that, people in WWE management thought it set the wrestling business back by 30 years. And I wonder who that was. I'm assuming it's that jackass Kevin Dunn. I'm assuming it's that idiot Kevin Dunn who likes to cut away 50 times a match, and give you and make your head hurt. But it's a situation for me personally where I thought the matchup was solid. Here's the problem, though. The ending of the match was absolute garbage. I would have much preferred if they would have just not shown Jericho go through the whatever it was and just showed the faces of the Inner Circle and MJF and the Pinnacle. Maybe even the Pinnacle could be horrified by what MJF did. Like, oh my God, this is our guy. Maybe it just kind of scares them even more to be him being their leader. But the fact that we just saw Chris Jericho even look up, like I saw in the video beforehand, somebody pointed it out, Chris Jericho's actually like looking like this to see what's going on. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like he's looking like he's that comfortable that he's just seen it. He was getting more sleep than I was last Wednesday. I can confirm Chris Jericho was getting more sleep than I wanted to jump off the cage and go into that thing because I felt like I would have got some great sleep last Wednesday. So, I mean, it's a situation with the cons. This is the second time that Tony Khan has kind of pissed me off with the pay-per-view match. Actually, the third time this week because, his father went ahead and hired Tim Tebow, and I don't like Tim Tebow. But, it's a situation now. It's a situation now where, this is the second time we've had a disappointing experience. And I just wonder, why is that? Maybe it's because you're on network television. If you're on network television, then if you're concerned about that, then why was this pay-per-view not at Double or Nothing? You do that on Double or Nothing where it's on pay-per-view. You got to buy it. You can have more craziness. You can have more blood. You can have more crazy things to do. And maybe throwing them off the top of the cage into something harder would probably be better. Now, granted, I want everybody to be safe, but we've seen Shane McMahon do some crazy spots. And guess what? It's still safe, but it still looks like it's a crazy, crazy spot. So I don't understand why AEW can't do that. He clearly landed on something that was very, very comfortable, very, very protected, and he looked like he was having a great sleep.
Yeah, well, so I agree with you, RKJ, man. I thought the ending was definitely a little anticlimactic because it looked fake, and I think that's a hard spot to do, and it was actually the right spot. Like, I actually love the idea. I thought the execution was kind of shitty between the two. You could clearly see MJF. I don't know if he didn't know when he was supposed to do it. You could see kind of Jericho almost give him instructions on when to do it as well. I thought the ending was a little clunky, and it kind of looked like it was super see-through. Like, we all knew it was going to happen. And I don't like that. I've told you guys with pro wrestling, I watch UFC and you have no idea what's going to happen. And then you watch pro wrestling, and when I know what's going to happen, it's like, well, I don't watch that. I don't need to see that, right? So, they gave away what was going to happen, and then the execution of that giveaway was also soft. Like, it looked like they're just protecting Jericho, and that's what you need to do. But pro wrestling's violent, and if everybody's bleeding, I don't need to see him land on a couple of fake wood panels and some cushions, right? All you need to do is just not show it. You could have him land on a fucking bed, for God's sake, or a bunch of pillows, and maybe the crowd sees it, but we don't. We've seen that plenty. I point to Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton, that spot where Jeff Hardy jumps off the Titantron. He clearly does not Randy Orton. We've seen, alternate videos that weren't shown on TV where Jeff Hardy just lands on essentially a cushion and doesn't land anywhere near Randy Orton. Because that's what you need to do. You can't jump on a guy, okay? It's real life. You can't kill somebody or something like that. And when Shane McMahon's jumped off the Hell in a Cell, like RKJ Man said, he's landed on a cushioned announce table. But it still looks real. And Shane McMahon, again, he hasn't had a life of pro wrestling, so his body isn't as banged up. He can take those kind of spots, whereas Jericho has wrestled since he was in his early 20s. He's now going on 30 years. I don't want to see him landing on the cement or the ground floor because, damn, the guy's career is going to end. But there was ways to execute it better, and I do before I shoot a little bit more on that spot. I want to say the pros. I love the match. I love the fact that they actually they made the crowd wait. Like, if you heard the rumors, not the rumors, the real life thing, the crowd, that was the only match they saw that night. Maybe besides AEW Dark and AEW Dark Elevation, they only saw that match for AEW Dynamite. So they were hyped. It worked. It was a good idea. The execution of a lot of the moves besides the end were amazing. That spot with Sammy Guevara and Shawn Spears was unreal. That Spanish fly off top rope. All the violence was real. I want to give credit to Santana and Ortiz. Their two biggest moments in AEW have been that parking lot brawl that was very, very violent.
That's right.
And now Blood and Guts that is very, very violent. Why not just save them for that stuff? Make them look like an ultra-violent tag team and don't put them in normal matches. If they're going to win the tag team championships, make them win in brutal fashion. Make them cheat. Make people bleed. That tag team needs to remain like that, and they've always flourished when the violence gets executed. I thought MJF did a great job in this match, looking like the top heel in the company, to be honest, maybe besides Kenny Omega. Everybody else did a good job as well. And then, like I said, the execution at the end kind of just ruined it. But it was still a good match. Like, it wasn't a bad match. It wasn't a bad thing for AEW. I do think the AEW needs to figure out the execution of big moments. They've now screwed up the two biggest moments they've had on TV in the last couple months. Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley, and now Chris Jericho and MJF, their two biggest storylines, they've essentially ruined with bad endings. So I think they need to figure that out. The cage was a little hard to see through, it seemed like, for the cameras as well at some points. And so, they need to figure it out. But yeah, when you have WWE people complaining about the blood, you really see that you really almost want to give AEW more credit, because WWE is just doing it completely wrong. I don't even know what's going on TV there. They lie to us about having the fist on SmackDown, and meanwhile we're complaining about Chris Jericho not dying, right? Like, AEW is still doing a good job compared to WWE, but it just, there's a lot of pros and cons. I don't want to steal your guys' thunder as well. I've been talking for a long time, but I thought there was good and bad, and it was a solid match. Like, I didn't really think there was that much wrong with it besides that ending.
Well, we'll go RKJ.
Well, I would say this. When you're talking about Shane McMahon, can we not forget about Steve Blackman, SummerSlam 2000, when he got thrown off of there in that situation, how cool that looked, and yet Shane McMahon was pretty much protected throughout that. I think Vince McMahon learned it after Mick Foley and Undertaker Hell in a Cell that you can do those types of spots as long as you do it safely with the right execution.
Yeah.
So that's something AEW does need to take from WWE, how to do spots like that safely with the right execution. And also, really quick moment here, really quick thing. The third thing that they've messed up on was the Christian Cage situation too. So that makes it three big.
Well, that's RKJ. That's your own opinion. And now we heard that it's essentially because TNT said they don't want surprises. So I think AEW was put in a tough situation there. They had to do something, and I think that's more of the top brass forcing them to do that. And I wouldn't take that away from. I'm talking about necessarily execution of match endings and final storylines, because we're not going to see more from the Pinnacle and the Inner Circle most likely, right? I think we'll see Chris Jericho versus MJF most likely, but besides that will be the end of it, right? And so with Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley, the ending was bad because of camera angles. Chris Jericho and MJF, the ending was bad because of camera angles. Maybe it's because of COVID and the fact that they are restricted from the amount of angles they can use. I think maybe when we get crowds back in, they can put cameras wherever they want. And maybe there's a lot more. But yeah, RKJ, I liked your idea. I thought maybe they could have just shown Santana's face when he goes through. Maybe they just show MJF staring at him with a glare. But as far as the Christian Cage goes thing, I think that was more of the TNT brass forcing them to do that because they were pissed about Sting.
Well, and really quickly, it goes back to the whole execution. Let's talk about execution in general. That was bad execution of a major superstar, bringing him onto the fold of AEW. But in regards to the whole situation with the Chris Jericho thing, I don't know if it's over yet. I think he did an interview and he said that it's not necessarily over. This is just the beginning between them. I don't even think he was talking about MJF. I think he's talking about the whole Inner Circle Pinnacle thing. That it's just the beginning. I think this whole feud is meant ultimately, obviously, to build MJF even more and make him even more of a credible heel as he gets further and further up his status into being an AEW and elite, and in terms of winning that world championship sooner rather than later. But I don't think it's definitely over between them. Now, as far as what could happen in the match, what they could have done, there's a lot of things they could have done in the match. They could have put cameras inside of it. Technology has gotten amazing with what you could do, but overall, it was their first blood and guts match too. So that's something also that we have to kind of think about too as well.
Again, and all this is being done during COVID. Again, it's we heard that they've announced that they're going to have full crowds again. They're going to be touring now in July and August, so they're going back to normal. But we're still in the pro wrestling world not back to normalcy at all, right? We're still getting very small crowds. We're still getting these kind of weird storylines because you can go further with things like the Randy Orton Fiend stuff. You can tape things because there's no crowd for reaction, right? So I think once we get into the fall and early 2022, I think we're going to see pro wrestling getting back to a better spot as far as spots, no pun intended. Like, I think, again, I want to give AEW credit because they're trying. They got the biggest rating and they've been, I believe doing it the right way as far as storylines go. I just think the execution at the very end has been tough. And maybe that's because you have a bunch of people that aren't really pro wrestling management running this thing, right? Like Tony Khan is essentially a fan that's rich, right? And is running this thing. And then you have 5 wrestlers running this thing. Yes, there's people behind the scenes that know pro wrestling, but I think, this is a fairly new group of people, right? It would be like us going and running a pro wrestling promotion. We're going to screw things up even if we have professionals on the job because we're not used to it. WWE, I think the reason they execute a lot on some big moments, although their storylines are terrible at most of the moments, is because they have Kevin Dunn. As much as we hate him, they have Vince McMahon, they have Billy Hayes, or Michael Hayes. And they have all these people that have been around for so long that they go, okay, well, the storylines suck, but we can recover by having a great match in a great spot, right? So I think to give AEW credit, again, it's a new operation. Most of their existence has been done during COVID, and I think this stuff will stop. And maybe let's not choose to throw the 55-year-old off the cell. Throw somebody else that can take the bump, right? And there's a lot of things they could do that was a little bit better. RKJ?
I will say this in regards to the whole WWE thing. We didn't mention this, obviously, because after the podcast with the WrestleMania podcast, but they have been starting to implement some younger talent in WWE. Like they have Jason Jordan doing some matches. They have Tyson Kidd doing some matches. So that's helping them as well. I just wonder with AEW, what can they do? I've heard, some reports that maybe they're having more production. They're having production meetings now, and that really wasn't happening. I think it was because of COVID and whatnot. So as long as they just keep on improving and they bring in certain veterans who won't devalue the business, who can just add to the business, or if maybe they can use fresher minds from around the business or fresher minds in that company. You have a Christian Cage there. You pick his brain, see what will work there. You have a John Moxley there, pick his brain, see what will work there. Those are 2 WWE guys. As long as you can have that situation too, where you have that influx of talent and that kind of togetherness from wrestlers too, I think that's going to help AEW with their execution of storylines and their television presentation.
True. Eric, last thoughts on Blood and Guts? Or actually, I'll point to this. they've announced now that this will be the last big event without fans, essentially, it seems like. So what are your thoughts on Double or Nothing about having a full crowd and AEW touring in the summer?
Well, it's no secret that they probably paid attention to UFC. I'm pretty sure every single sports have seen what UFC can do, because that was probably like the only guys who can have a full capacity crowd. So I think AEW is probably going to do the same thing. Hey, if it worked out for UFC, it's going to work out for us. So I'm pretty sure, hopefully, Double or Nothing can probably change up the stage a bit just to make things a little bit different.
Yeah.
Kind of like what they did for Revolution. Just something unique. So it's something that's going to be probably a lot of people are going to tune into that one. And I think that's something that they're going to be recovering from last year, because Double or Nothing, as good as it was, it did have its problems last year. Hopefully this Double or Nothing can prove to have, be better than last year's. So that's with fans. That's what I think.
No, true. And I'll say this. I hope this will be my last thoughts on AEW before we transition. But I hope that AEW, with the allowance of fans, goes back to normal with this crowd. Like, let people sit ringside. Maybe they're all vaccinated. Maybe you do it that way. But we need to, if you're going to put a pay-per-view on with full crowd, do it like UFC and do it right. I don't want to see the same camera angle that we've been seeing. I don't want to see the same looking thing we've seen for the past year plus. I want to see something different because I'm paying money, and I don't want it to be an extension of Dynamite. I want it to look like something different. And if the UFC is doing that correct right now, with the UFC Fight Night still being in the Apex, and then the big crowds, you pay for more money because you're seeing a better content. So I want to see the fans, man. I think pro wrestling has took the biggest hit it has in modern times, with the fact there's been no fans. Pro wrestling has been clearly worse, and it's not their fault. But if you're going to allow fans, do it right. Do it the way it used to be. Allow the fans to be involved. Allow them to do whatever they want. And, let people wear masks. If they're vaccinated, okay. Right? You do it that way. Do it the correct way. Do it the safe way. But if you're going to do it right. And don't pussy out of it. And don't, have the wrestlers at ringside and all that shit they've been doing. I want to see different with them be paying for this stuff. RKJ, last thought before we move on to boxing.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, honestly, I haven't been watching AEW in a very long time. And part of that reason is because it's the same situation. Sure. You could barely hear the crowd. It's still not really audible that you could hear it very, very well in some cases. And it's just kind of depressing to watch. So I just haven't been watching AEW. In addition to the work schedule I've had lately, haven't really been watching it. So, I'm looking forward to them having Double or Nothing with full fans. I'll say this. I'm fully vaccinated. If I lived in the Jacksonville area and I had that day off, or I got off at a good enough time, I would go to that pay-per-view. Yeah. Okay? Wear my mask, wash my hands, social distance, do whatever you got to do. But I would still go to that pay-per-view because I know that I've done what I needed to do to keep people around me safe and keep myself safe. And I would still do that. So if you're there, you should go. My only thing is this. I hope when they get back that we've seen that same type of pop. And I hope we do have full capacity crowds, because the CDC has said that they expect a sharp decline in cases by July. They're going to have their first pay-per-view or their first Dynamite outside of Daily's Place, and God knows how long, on July 7th. I expect a full crowd. I expect there to be a lot of energy and a lot of emotion. I expect big matches at that card as well. So that's what I'm hoping for. The old AEW to come back, which is just full of live emotion and crowd. And I think this pandemic has made us realize how much the crowd can make a match.
100%.
We had probably in the first couple of months of the AEW, we had a few bad matches, but because the crowd was so phenomenal and they reacted so well, we didn't notice that because we were just into it because of the crowd. And ever since the crowd's gone away, it's been a situation where we've seen some of us be more critical of the wrestling. And we've kind of pointed out things more because you don't hear the crowd saying, ooh and ah and what that, and just going crazy. So I think having the crowd is going to be a huge, huge impact for AEW, and I'm looking forward to full fans, and if they can do it safely as well.
True. Yeah, I'm ready to get back indoors. Indoor arenas are louder. It's just the simple fact that open air stadium is not as loud, and that's what Daily's place is. And yeah, who knows? If Daniel Bryan decides to sign with AEW, I'd love to see that pop inside an arena and not outside, because I think that's what guys like him and Sting and Rusev and, excuse me, not Rusev, Miro and all these other guys that have signed deserved. And, I would love to have seen Brody Lee get that, that hometown welcome like he was supposed to on the original Blood and Guts, right? I would love to see Sting get the authentic reaction. I would have loved to see Matt Hardy, right? We need to see that again, along with the match spots and everything. All right, let's move on to, speaking of full crowds, Canelo Alvarez versus Billy Joe Saunders inside Cowboys Stadium. AT&T Stadium to be specific, 70,000 strong. It was the largest crowd ever for boxing. Who would have thought that would have happened in 2021, right? So Canelo Alvarez gets a big win. I believe it was a knockout in the 7th round. Just one of his brutal uppercuts that literally ended the fight. Billy Joe Saunders wasn't knocked out, but he couldn't see anymore after one punch, and that just shows you how good Canelo Alvarez is. Eric, I'll toss it to you again. First, I know you're a big fan of Canelo Alvarez. What were your thoughts on the fight itself, and then what are your thoughts now that Canelo just seems to be dominating everybody he fights?
Well, actually, not much of a fan of Canelo, but I do respect how much he's done as of late. Canelo, man, what he did to Billy Joe Saunders, damn, that was a brutal uppercut. And Saunders, if he would have gone and keep going up against Canelo, freaking Saunders would have had his eye socket probably popped out.
Probably,
Yeah. So I know it would be probably a really, really ugly scene. Probably a really bad scene since seeing Weidman's leg, snapped. Oh, jeez. And we want to see that again. So that's another thing. Canelo, it's just one of those things where I wasn't surprised at the same time him winning, because just Saunders was just not much of a threat to him. It's just nothing against him. It's just Canelo has improved so much, and he's come a long way, and he has completely gone on to a different just a different stance, just a much more different fighter now this time, as opposed to what he did when he went up against Triple G and Mayweather. So I think with this new style, much more of an aggressive style, that's the thing that I felt like he had more of an advantage than Saunders. I just felt like Canelo was it's going to be an easy payday. Yeah. And then obviously, seeing Canelo, he just looked more cleaner, and he was willing to go for more rounds. It's just Saunders, he's a tough dude, but at the same time, it's like, if he would have kept fighting, really, again, like I really think he would have gone blind. So
yeah. It was a brutal ending, and it was the right ending. Billy Joe Saunders essentially said he couldn't see, so he's not giving up. He's just saying, I want to fight, but I can't see, and his corner is obviously going to hook him up and not ruin his career, right? RKJ Man, you follow Canelo a little bit more than most boxers, right? We watched the Canelo Triple G first fight together, right? We don't watch a lot of boxing together. We watch Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury and all that stuff. But your thoughts on Canelo Alvarez? He gets another big win. It was a guy that specifically went after him, unlike a lot of other guys. So it's almost a more impressive win than normal, because Canelo got popped a couple times. If you go watch the replay, Canelo got punched pretty hard a couple times and just took it on the chin, and then his cardio got a little bit better, and then he ends up with a brutal uppercut to finish the fight in the 8th round. A correction of myself, I said the 7th. Your thoughts on Canelo and what's next for him specifically?
So first of all, that was an impressive win by Canelo. He was able to find a way to win. It was a dominant fight, but it's the classic case for me of the old saying, if a tree falls in the middle of a forest and no one hears it, did it really fall? And I'm going to be quite frank with you, Canelo Alvarez has not really had the best competition for a very, very long time. The closest has been is Triple G. And what is Triple G doing? Like, well, is Triple G doing anything right now? I mean, to be honest with you, Canelo Alvarez has, credit to him, has been going on DAZN. He signed a deal with DAZN. He's been fighting in AT&T Stadium. These big money-making fights, making really good money. but he's fighting just lame duck competition. Like it's just completely and totally average, the definition of average. So, I mean, yeah, I can give credit to Canelo Alvarez for winning, and I will give credit to him for winning, but I'm not impressed with him facing these opponents. Now, granted, we can say it's because these opponents don't want to come out of the woodwork yet. Maybe it's because of COVID. Maybe it's for other reasons, money, situation, their promotions. I have no clue what it is, but it's about time that he actually faces someone who can actually knock him the hell out. Because so far, I very rarely have found a lot of people who could knock him the hell out. Maybe he challenges Floyd Mayweather again after that Paul match, because I think Floyd Mayweather is going to kill Paul. Personally, that's what I think is going to happen. But I mean, we could talk about that later.
Hopefully.
I think we're getting a killing on live television like I'm hoping for. Honestly,
okay.
I'm hoping for.
I don't want to go there, but okay.
I'm sorry, what?
Wouldn't want to go there, but okay.
Well, I'm hoping for a killing on live television.
Oh, jeez.
It's time for a lesson to be learned by those Paul brothers. They don't need to be in that anymore. But anyway, it's a situation where Canelo has dominated. He's known how to market himself. I'm looking for something better. I'm looking for something to make me say, you know what? I'm going to sit down and watch this boxing match. I haven't bought a boxing match, honestly, since Mayweather and McGregor. Why? Because it was two guys, and it was something entertaining and good. Now, it wasn't legitimate because it's Conor McGregor, but it's still something I was interested in. If Canelo Alvarez faces a boxer who's something that's legitimate, then guess what? I'll buy the fight. I don't want to buy any Canelo Alvarez fights right now, though, because I know I'm going to get a knockout by Canelo before the 12th round. It's a guarantee.
Yeah, no, and RKJ, that makes sense because you're not necessarily a fan of Canelo, so you're not gonna buy it to watch that guy win. Like I remember getting a subscription to Showtime to watch Deontay Wilder knock people out because I liked watching him knock out. But besides that, that was it. Like I wanted to see him win so that he'd fight Tyson Fury for that second time, and so I bought that. And this pay-per-view I did stream because I assumed Canelo Alvarez would win, right? And so I agree with you in that sense that his fights are predictable. I'll disagree with you in blaming him for that because I just think he's too damn good. Like the guy is so good, his opponents look bad. These are some legitimate boxers, right? And to give Canelo, here's the credit I'm going to give him, okay? The difference with Canelo and some of these other guys is he is fighting talent that you would say isn't up to his par. Again, it's not his fault. And what's most impressive about this is he's fighting this talent every couple months. Like these aren't Triple G, these aren't Errol Spence, these aren't Terrence Crawford, this isn't Floyd Mayweather, right? But he's fighting some damn solid talent every couple months. We don't see this in the UFC. We don't. I mean, here's what he's been doing. Okay, coming back from the pandemic, he fought Callum Smith on December 19, 2020. 3 months later, or actually 2 months later, he fights Idilarim in Miami and destroys him in the third round. Right? Then 3 months later, in early May, he fights Billy Joe Saunders. It's 2.5 months per fight. This is unheard of in boxing. Before the pandemic, he fought December 15th, then fought in May 2019, and then fought in November 2019. Yes, not 2.5 months, but every couple months. I don't see Tyson Fury doing that. I don't see Anthony Joshua doing that. I don't see Errol Spence doing that, although Errol Spence was in a car accident, so I'll give him a pass. And I damn sure don't see Terrence Crawford doing that. Terrence Crawford never fights a fucking guy ever and thinks he's the best in the world. He's still on ESPN ranked as the top guy. Okay, fight somebody, bro. Anybody can go out. You know, if Mike Trout only faced minor league pitching, he would fucking be the best player in the world and be the best of all time and would go to the Hall of Fame because he'd probably have 800 home runs. But no, Mike Trout has to face Jacob deGrom occasionally, has to face Clayton Kershaw, has to face these top guys, right? You know, the Panthers don't get to face Notre Dame every time, right? They have to face the New Orleans Saints. They have to face the Green Bay Packers occasionally, the Dallas Cowboys, the New England Patriots, right? So when Canelo is fighting these guys, it's because he wants to fight. And you look at what the Pauls are doing, right? The Pauls are fucking fighting, right? They're putting on interesting fights. Yes, the Triller thing was a disaster. It was a joke, and it makes me not want to buy Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul. And then I remembered, oh, it's Floyd Mayweather. He's a professional boxer. I'm going to watch that, right? Because the fact that Logan Paul got Floyd Mayweather out, but Joshua and Fury can't figure out a date and money is ridiculous. Terrence Crawford doesn't fight because he can't figure out money. He can't figure out opponent. But Logan Paul got Floyd Mayweather out of retirement. Canelo Alvarez sells out 70,000 seats, but these other guys just don't fight. What is going on? This is the reason that boxing has the disrespect that it does. And RKJ Man's not wrong for that disrespect because they're not showing him enough. They're not putting on good enough content because the top guys are acting like pussies and they're not fighting. I get they want money. But how about you make 10 million here, 10 million there, 20 million here, like Canelo is fighting guys. Canelo's opponents have gotten better. Callum Smith was a solid opponent, but then he moved up and got Dilladrim. And then now Billy Joe Saunders is a legitimate boxer. He's now going to face most likely Caleb Plant unless he gets a super fight. Caleb Plant is a solid boxer. Canelo should win, but it's a good fight. It's not just a destruction like these other fights. So I think boxing's hurting itself, and the reason Canelo doesn't get as much respect outside of the Mexican fans is because the other boxers are rooting for him. Canelo Alvarez is the best right now because he's fighting and because he's winning. The one loss he has is when he was 21 years old to Floyd Mayweather, and Floyd Mayweather's top 5 all time, right? And besides that, he's 56-1. That's ridiculous. Terrence Crawford's like, 25-0, right? It's not the same, and they're not fighting. It's because they don't fight, right? So there's my rant, but I'll toss it to Eric again. Eric, do you agree with me on this? Do you think Canelo has a disrespect because of the other boxers?
In a way, a little bit, yeah. But as I'm seeing right now with him, people love him because he's the most active guy out of everybody as of right now. So I think that's something that I think a lot of people may have to look at and have to appreciate. As much as I'm not much of a fan of him as much as I was, I think at the same time I have to respect that he's a more active guy out of everybody in the boxing scene. And and that's something that I think the Paul brothers are trying to do, which we may not like them, but at the same time they're trying to be at the same level as Canelo. But you know what? With Canelo, it's just the fact that they haven't really found like an opponent that can match up his skills, his equal, his aggressive stance, his just the way how he fights. I think that's just the thing that a lot of people are not looking at. They haven't seen like an equal opponent for Canelo since Triple G. Cotto can be another one as well, but Cotto, I think he was on his way out. But there's still a match that a lot of people wanted to see at the time, and they did. Canelo beat him, unanimous decision, and then Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. They were prepping him up, but that was not obviously the case. Canelo just beat him down, and really the only thing that what is the thing that can bring excitement to Canelo really is either having his rematch against Mayweather or having a trilogy fight between him and Triple G. But that's just something that a lot of people that's just something that Triple G has to look at, but we haven't seen much of Triple G, so I'll toss it to you, RKJ. Yeah,
look, okay, so you mentioned, Nick, about how he's been fighting every couple months, Canelo Alvarez, right? Yeah, I'm not sure if that's Canelo or if that's DAZN begging him to fight every couple of months, because DAZN, nobody's watching DAZN besides Canelo Alvarez, and people are barely watching DAZN for Canelo Alvarez anyway, so it could be that. Second of all, you said good. I haven't heard the word great. I want to see great when I'm buying a pay-per-view. I want to see greatness. I want to see two guys who are the same, matched up against each other. And I want it to be a situation where it's pound for pound the best fight I can see. I'm not seeing that. And Eric, you totally ripped it out. You totally thought what I was thinking. His fight that he needs to do is Floyd Money Mayweather. I don't know why he couldn't get to Floyd Mayweather before that Paul brother got to him. I don't know how. Maybe Floyd was running away from him. Maybe
Floyd's scared.
And maybe Floyd's scared. It could be a situation where Floyd's scared. But imagine Canelo Alvarez versus Floyd Money Mayweather, full fans, sometime in September. How fantastic that would be to see that, and Floyd Money Mayweather finally getting knocked out and losing his first matchup against Canelo Alvarez. Now, that is the big money match that I'm paying to see, that the whole family will watch. But nobody's watching this stuff with Canelo Alvarez lately. There's not. And he's doing a great job. He's making his money. He's fighting good fighters. I mean, he was fighting mediocre fighters. Now he's fighting good fighters. But I haven't heard the word great yet. Until I hear the word great, then guess what? Not a lot of people are going to really care about what Canelo Alvarez is doing.
It's a fair point. I didn't buy the pay-per-view either. I streamed it and didn't even watch the whole fight because I just assumed Alvarez was going to win early. But he didn't, and then I actually ended up seeing a knockout, which was nice. And it's tough for Canelo because also in his division, let me just get this stat up, but my computer's being a little weird.
I mean, Canelo's still a young guy. It's not like he's like older. He's 30. He's 30. Yeah.
No. But here's the thing. The problem is there's guys he can fight, but the problem is a lot of those top guys, like I mentioned, Errol Spence and those type of guys are not close to his division. This last fight with Billy Joe Saunders was at 167, and the next division's 160, and then the next division's 145. Those guys fight in the 140 range. So it's like that some of the top boxers in the world are just in different divisions, and it's too much of a leap for both of them, whether it's Canelo going down or Terrence Crawford and them going up, because the punching power for Canelo is too much at those lower weight. So it's like it would be like trying to get in Francis Ngannou to fight a Kamaru Usman or something. Like, it's not going to happen, right? So I don't blame Canelo necessarily in that rank. I think there are guys that he can sort of go up or down to, but it's just going to be hard to find those top guys unless he loses a lot of weight or these other guys gain a lot of weight. Unfortunately, you have the Charlo brothers who he could fight. You have Triple G. You have Caleb Plant, like I mentioned. You have Floyd Mayweather, if that's possible, or fuck it, Logan Paul, and have him kill him on live TV. You know what I'm saying? Like it's Canelo's in a tough spot. He's just so damn good for his division. It's like there's nowhere he can go. Maybe he goes up to like heavyweight or something, but I don't think he's that big. Like, it's just not possible, right? It's a tough situation to be in. So all credit to Canelo Alvarez. We'll be excited to watch the other guys, but fuck, these other guys need to fight, man. Canelo's fought 3 times since December. That's ridiculous. You don't hear about that. MMA guys don't do that. He's Hamzat Chimaev of boxing, and he's also the best. It's crazy. All right, let's move to, speaking of UFC, let's move to UFC 262, headlined by Michael Chandler and Charles Oliveira. This fight is for the vacant lightweight championship of the world. It's Khabib's title. It's Chandler, who's only in his second UFC fight. It's Charles Oliveira, who's at the top of his career right now, having big wins against Kevin Lee and Tony Ferguson. It's a solid fight. It's maybe not the best lightweight fight we could have because Khabib retired, unfortunately, right? But it's the fight we have. Michael Chandler getting his shot. RKJ Man, I'll point to you first on this one. Do you think Michael Chandler deserves this shot already? Or do you maybe think it could have been a Dustin Poirier or some other lightweight champion because Michael Chandler gets the one knockout of Dan Hooker? He comes from Bellator. Should Michael Chandler be in this position before we even talk about the fight?
If you're asking a professional, yeah, I guess he should be. I mean, Dustin Poirier's got to go through Conor again. But if you're asking the casual RKJ Man, I'm saying hell no. Like I don't know who any of these guys are, to be honest with you. I had to do some heavy research on them and find out some things. And yes, Michael Chandler has a very impressive record. He's never been submitted before. That's one thing I found out when doing my research. Never been submitted. And Michael Oliveira is known for submitting people with that guillotine choke. And he has many other submissions that he could do to force people to tap out or submit. So, I mean, that's fantastic. That's great to see. But still, Michael Chandler, he's had one matchup and now he's getting jolted up essentially to the main event level of UFC because of this one matchup. We don't have anybody. So, personally, I don't personally think so, and I don't think it's going to sell a lot of buys because these two guys are rather unknown. Will it be an interesting match? I think it will be. But is it something that, as a casual fan, that I care about? I'm going to say hell no.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And in that way, you're saying that he probably shouldn't be in that spot. I think there's other guys like Justin Gaethje you could make a case for. And then, of course, we would have loved to see Khabib in this spot versus anybody, essentially, because he's a draw. Eric, same question to you. Do you think Michael Chandler should be here? I think we all can agree Oliveira should be here just based on what he's done, and we assume that he'd be the guy that would have fought Khabib. But should Michael Chandler be here, or should it be Gaethje or somebody else?
Personally, I did kind of want Gaethje to be a part of it. I really think that he would have deserved it. But again, the UFC, they were all pinpointing Dustin Poirier to be involved in the title mix. But obviously, it looks like they've been seeing a little bit of, back and forth with Conor McGregor about this charity fight that they had over in Abu Dhabi, and then they said, "Hey, why don't we do it again?" And then I think that's just the way, just to like, okay, I'll do it again. Why not? Fuck it, But then, I guess the UFC looked at it and they're like, okay, I guess like if Poirier ain't gonna be a part of it, then guess what? Michael Chandler, do you want to be getting a title shot? Yeah, sure, why not? All right, let's get in there, And then so at first, I kind of thought that I would have wanted Michael Chandler to have a couple more matches, but I think maybe the UFC was also put in a tough spot for the lightweight division by saying, you know what, we need to have somebody to match up against Oliveira. Really, it could have been Gaethje, but you know what, Michael Chandler, off of an impressive win against Dan Hooker. With a lot of people were betting that Dan Hooker was going to beat him, but Chandler gave him that knockout first round, impressive. So, this is going to be a tough test though. But I think as far as like deserving, as a fan of Michael Chandler, I want to say yes, but at the same time, I feel like the UFC they were just trying to find a quick opponent for Oliveira just to fill in the vacated lightweight title match. That's what I think.
Yeah, so and I'll give my opinion on this because it just, if you look at the rankings, Dustin Poirier is number one, rightfully so. He chose to do the money fight with Conor McGregor, and nobody's complaining about that because I think that Poirier really in that situation is in a can't lose situation, right? He's going to make a ton of money, and even if he loses to Conor McGregor, he's still going to be at the top of the rankings, and one more win most likely means a title shot. So he's in a win-win situation. The problem I have with Michael Chandler getting this shot, not being a fan of him, I'm not saying I am not a fan of him, but I don't necessarily care for him, is that Justin Gaethje is number 2, Charles Oliveira is number 3. So why the hell not are the next two opponents fighting for the vacant title? Is Justin Gaethje hurt? Did he disagree with the fight? I don't know. But you now have 3 versus 4 when number 2 is sitting on the sidelines. I don't think that's necessarily right. What I think the UFC did with this and why they made this fight is because Justin Gaethje's last fight was against Khabib. He got dominated. He got destroyed, right? So we've already seen Justin Gaethje fight for the lightweight championship within the last year, and he got killed. Who have we not seen get killed is Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler. And so I think that's the reason we get this fight. Those two guys have not had a shot at the title. Now they both at the same exact time. And Michael Chandler's a bigger name than any of those guys besides Dustin Poirier. So I think they go with the deserving opponent in Charles Oliveira, and then they go with the more popular opponent in Michael Chandler. I mean, I'm sure, guys, Conor McGregor, if he would have beat Dustin Poirier, would be fighting for the title, right? We would expect it to be Oliveira, exactly, most likely versus Conor McGregor because he's more popular. Would he have deserved it? Probably not, but he's famous. Michael Chandler is the most famous lightweight besides Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier just chose not to fight for a title and chose to fight for money. So we go to Michael Chandler as the next opponent, considering Justin Gaethje in his one shot for the title got lit the fuck up by a guy that does not box. Okay, so, that's where I see it there. I respect the Chandler for being the more famous fighter. Do I think he deserves it? No, but I understand what the UFC did. Now, I'll give my opinion on the fight first. This is an interesting matchup. Oliveira gets most of his wins via submission. And then like RKJ just said, Michael Chandler's never been submitted. So hell yeah, we got a good fight here. It makes sense, right? And no, seriously, if you look at how Oliveira's won most of his big fights recently, he submitted Kevin Lee in the 3rd round, and he's, via decision, beat Tony Ferguson, where most of the time he was on the ground trying to submit him. He has, before a couple of knockouts of Jared Gordon and Nick Lentz, who are, lower tier fighters, he had 4 submissions in a row, and before a knockout of Paul Felder, had what looks like another 4 submissions in a row, most of them coming from guillotine. Okay, so he's a guillotine specialist as well. So essentially how I see this fight going is, if Michael Chandler just doesn't wrestle on the ground and doesn't go on his back, he's likely going to win this fight because he's the better wrestler. He's never been submitted. And I got to go with Michael Chandler. I think he's the hotter fight. Oliveira also has the problem of, giving up in fights, not fighting as hard when he's down. I've always been a big critic of guys that don't go for it in the final rounds. Oliveira's been that guy in the past. I would not expect Michael Chandler to be that type of guy, knowing the situation that he's in. You were given this opportunity. You have a chance to make a ton of money being a name. Hell, you fight most likely Poirier or Conor McGregor next, okay? Or maybe you jump up and fight a wrestler in Kamaru Usman. Right? Maybe you lower, you go after Max Holloway or Alexander Volkanovski, another big fight. So if Michael Chandler wins this fight, he has a big fight coming for him next. And I think he'll go for it. And I think we see a knockout before the 3rd round. They don't know what round it's going to be because it's hard for me to guess 1st or 2nd. But I see Michael Chandler winning this via TKO in the 1st or 2nd round. Eric, give your prediction on this fight.
After doing that UFC 4 simulation and Michael Chandler knocking out Oliveira, be sure to check it out.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
You should have said spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert right there. Spoiler alert for y'all right there. But you know what, Nick? That could be a pretty accurate statement right there. That could be pretty. That could happen. Although I do believe that Oliveira will find what. Chandler, he'll probably be reading him, and he's a very patient guy. He's one of those guys where I feel like Oliveira, he's going to be able to read him off a little bit, saying, all right, which part should I pick him apart? And then he's going to try to use jiu-jitsu, but then I feel like his jiu-jitsu is going to fail at the same time. Michael Chandler's going to use more of his wrestling because that's something that can tire out his jiu-jitsu. And Oliveira's going to have to figure out ways, okay, maybe I'm going to have to go for some submission holds. So I think that Oliveira, I think this is the type of guy who he can submit Chandler. I really feel like he's the kind of guy who can try to put him on the ground. Michael Chandler, we'll see what happens. I do feel like he'll probably try to knock him out, but I just feel like Oliveira is just a much more better rounded fighter. I wouldn't be surprised if Michael Chandler wins, though, but I do feel like Oliveira has more tools, and he's just fought some of the more elite fighters. And, Michael Chandler, he's a great fighter. He just fought Dan Hooker. Has he fought any of the elite guys from the UFC? That's a big question right there. No, he has. He just only fought Dan Hooker. While Oliveira, he's fought guys like Tony Ferguson. He went up against guys like Kevin Lee, Gordon, Miller. So it's the cream of the crop. So, and he's a submission specialist. So I expect something to go down in the 2nd round, and I think Oliveira is going to submit him in the 2nd round. He'll find ways. Right. It's going to take time for Oliveira to find ways to try to put him on the ground and submit him. Armbar, triangle choke. I think triangle choke might take place.
Ooh, okay.
If I want to get specific with Oliveira.
Okay. So RKJ, break the tie. Who do you got?
So both of you guys stole things that I would say, but you know what? Fair play here because I've done it before too. But it's a situation, Eric. You were talking about some of the people he's faced, and also I just wanted to say this: he's not just a submission specialist. He can knock some people out. He's had a few knockouts himself in that situation. Now, granted, he gets people, I think, to the ground, But it's a situation where he can just knock you out too. So that's a double whammy situation. I can submit you, and if you want to do the ground, if you want to go up and box, hey, I can do that too. So he's got the double punch there. Personally, from what I'm looking at, I'm picking Charles Oliveira in this fight. And the reason why I'm picking him is because of what I just said, the fact that he can go on the ground, and the fact that he can submit you as well. Do I think this is going to be a longer fight? Yes, I do. I think submission artists, their fights go longer most of the time because they're just trying to figure out ways to get you on the mat and trying to wear you down throughout the match. But I'm picking Charles Oliveira in the 4th round here to win by submission and to get a win over Michael Chandler. And you know what? I think Oliveira versus a McGregor or a freaking Dustin Poirier will be a good fight for UFC in the next big pay-per-view. But yeah, Oliveira is going to win this fight because of his ability to stand up and fight or get you to the mat.
Yeah, it's great analysis that we just did, guys, because I can even play devil's advocate and give a reason for Oliveira to win that you guys didn't even mention, and that's the fact that Oliveira is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu specialist, even a higher level jiu-jitsu specialist than most. Not only is he Brazilian, where that comes from, he's 3rd degree, so he's a lot higher. The last person Michael Chandler fought at this high of a level for a championship, it was Patricio Pitbull Fabri. And you know what happened in that fight? He lost. And that Patricio is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. So there's a reason Michael Chandler, I mean, there's a clear, there's a way he can lose. And Patricio Pitbull did not submit him. He knocked him out a little controversial fashion, but still he lost. And so maybe Chandler looks a little too much to protect against submission. Maybe he gets knocked out. Maybe he gets put in the guillotine when he goes for a takedown, right? There is a lot of ways for Michael Chandler to lose. I am not saying this is going to be an easy win for Michael Chandler. I just think Michael Chandler has found his moment in the UFC, and I think he just is the better fighter overall, in my opinion, with his knockout power. And so that's why I go Mike Chandler. But like I said, I can play devil's advocate too and give you a reason Oliveira could win. So I think overall the Ring Generals might have Oliveira winning. It'd be interesting. I'm going to talk to Jesse a little bit later this week and see what he thinks about this fight and see if it's 3-1, 2-2. But this is a great fight. And if you're not the biggest fan, or you are casual and you are looking for something to do on Saturday night besides maybe watch the NHL playoffs, there is this big time fight happening, and it will be a good one. Now, real quick, co-main event, Beneil Dariush versus Tony Ferguson, 2 guys that train in Orange County. Shout out to, an Orange County fight. Tony Ferguson with 2 bad losses in a row. Okay, to Justin Gaethje and Charles Oliveira, the top guys in the division. Beneil Dariush, 2 fantastic wins in a row to 2 guys lower in the division, and he finally gets his first big fight. So this is an impressive fight. It's 2 guys that train in the same area with similar coaches. Real quick, don't need to get into it. It's 2 bang-em-out brawler guys. Do we think it's the end of Tony Ferguson, or do we think he gets redemption, and do we think that he ends up winning this fight and knocking Beneil out of the top 15? What happens? RKJ, you're shaking your head. You got a lot of enthusiasm over there. What do you think happens in this one?
How old is Tony Ferguson?
It's a good question. I think he's 37.
I'll get you that in 1 second. Tony Ferguson is 37 years old.
Yeah.
It's time for him to lay it, honestly. You know what? Black Stradamus has said this.
Here we go.
Again.
Said this about Cowboy Donald Cerrone.
Here we go again.
Jesse doesn't like it because of the truth. The fact of the matter is this: these old fighters are getting all this publicity and all this credit for what they did a million years ago, where there's new up-and-coming fresh talent who can absolutely possibly kill it for UFC. So guess what? Tony Ferguson's got to go. He's getting knocked out in the first round.
That is a brutal and disrespectful prediction right there for Tony Ferguson. Eric, I know he just pissed you off, so I'll give you a chance. What do you think happens? Do you think it's as easy? Do you think Ferguson's done, or do you think this is a knock him out, drag him out brawl?
It's going to be a knockout, drag out brawl, but I do believe that Tony Ferguson, because even though he did not submit the last time up against Charles Oliveira, they actually stopped it because freaking Tony Ferguson's arm was about to be ripped open, and so they stopped it. Same thing with Gaethje. I think it was his cornerman who stopped the fight, right, Nick? Or was it the referee?
Well, it was in the Gaethje one. He was essentially knocked out on his feet. He was shaking his head. It seemed like he had concussion-like symptoms during the fight. Not that happens all the time, obviously, but like it was bad, and it was in the fourth or fifth round.
He's a freak. So people may not be paying attention to how much of a freaky dude he is. Willing to continue, he'll keep going even if his eyes are probably blown out. He'll still keep fighting. So that's probably the toughness of Tony Ferguson that people are not seeing. So it's going to go with a drag-out brawl. But I do believe that Dariush has been on the path. He's been doing really well, and he's been getting a lot of fans as of late. And I'm rooting for him as much as I love Tony Ferguson. He's going to lose due to a stoppage around the fourth round.
Wow.
That's just much. No, sorry. Third round. Yeah, because it's 3 rounds. So it's
Dariush wins?
Yeah, Dariush wins due to a stoppage because Ferguson will not quit. He will not submit, and he will not, get knocked down. He'll keep continuing until they stop it.
Yeah, here's the thing with me. You guys are putting on some good analysis. Since March 3rd, 2018, Beneil Dariush has won 6 straight fights. He has beaten Drew Dober, Frank Camacho, Thiago Moises, Drakkar Klose, Carlos Diego Ferreira. He has beaten some killers. The Drakkar Klose fight, he was nearly knocked out. He comes out and knocks Klose out a couple seconds ago. He knocked Scott Holtzman out in 22 seconds. Dariush is in the prime of his career right now. When you look at Tony Ferguson, like we said, 37 years old, but we go to the record, right? He has a great fight against Anthony Pettis. He wins in the second round via corner stoppage. He was losing in that fight earlier, though. When he fought Donald Cerrone, the only reason that fight got stopped is because he blew Cerrone's eye out. Cerrone was not done. He just punched his eye like Canelo Alvarez, and the fight was stopped. Then he gets dominated by Justin Gaethje, and he gets dominated by Charles Oliveira. Tony Ferguson has not had a solid fight and a solid performance in 4 fights. Even though he had some wins, he is on the downturn of his career. This is an easy pick for me. I think it's Beneil Dariush. I think it will go the distance because obviously this is only a 3-round fight. So it will go the distance. And Eric, I think that's why you changed it to not 4th round but 3rd round.
3 rounds, yeah.
Obviously, yeah.
Well, these past few fights
we're all thinking, he's a 5-round fighter, but this is only a 3-round fight. It will go the distance, but I think Dariush gets an easy win. I think Ferguson will get in some shots. I don't think Dariush will go unscathed. He has a tendency to get hit hard, too. He reminds me of Yuri, the guy that just knocked out Dominic Reyes. Holy shit, what a knockout that was. But I got Beneil Dariush, and like I said, he trains about 5 minutes away from where I live. So hopefully maybe we can get an interview with him after the fight. But you never know. Like, he might be getting big time after this, so it might be a little hard. RKJ, last thoughts on this fight?
Hey, man, really quickly, man. Like, Eric's over here glorifying Tony Ferguson for getting knocked the fuck out but still staying in it. I don't really care about that. Like, it doesn't matter to me, Eric, honestly, that Charles Ferguson is getting destroyed in the face. Tony Ferguson, whatever his name is getting destroyed in the face, and his eye socket's about to come out, and he's still fighting. He's losing the fight, so that really doesn't matter to me. And I just wonder when people like you, Jesse, Joe Rogan, and them are willing to be like, hey, these old fighters that you guys have loved for years, like Cowboy Donald Cerrone, Tony Ferguson, whoever else is up there, they need to give it up. When are you guys going to admit that? Because I think people like you are pushing Tony Ferguson and Donald Cerrone to keep fighting when they're getting knocked the fuck out every single fight.
That's right, RKJ. Just like The Rock should hang it up, right?
The Rock is not going to
go. Here we go.
In his thing. He's not going to hang it up. Rock hasn't wrestled.
The Rock tore his abdomen last time he fought.
Oh, that was not his fault. That's
it. What do you mean it wasn't his fault?
That was a freak injury. That wasn't his fault.
No, he's old. He's fucking old. That's why
he's not old.
Yes, he is. He's older than most fighters.
Let me ask you a question. If The Rock were to come out of retirement today,
I knew it was going to happen.
Everybody and their mom would want to watch that. But if Ferguson,
okay. But well, did we not all want to see Tony Ferguson versus Khabib? That was like a top 5 fight for most
That
fans.
was a tough fight. Yeah.
Go back and look at the old tapes. Go back and look at the old videos. Subscribe, like, and comment. And go back to look at our previous stuff and me saying how Tony Ferguson, if he would have faced Khabib, would have gotten destroyed.
Yeah, that's true.
And then me saying Gaethje was going to get destroyed by Khabib.
I'm just talking about The Rock. I'm not talking. I think Tony Ferguson's going to get killed. I think he's at the end of his career. RKJ. It's not because. It's not because I think Tony Ferguson isn't a fighter. I just think that he has gotten too much punishment in his career. And I think that if you look at the last 4 fights, he's declined worse and worse, and his performance has been worse and worse in each of those fights. He got lucky against Cowboy that he punched his eye hard enough. And as we know, Cowboy was at the end of his career too. So, I think Ferguson loses to a lot of guys. I think Ferguson can still fight because he has big fights he can maybe do. He can maybe fight a Nate Diaz. He can maybe fight a Conor McGregor in a big time fight where those are other guys that can kind of lose and still be famous, right? But I think Ferguson, as far as being a top end fighter, a chance at the championship, I think it's over.
It's over.
It's done, and
it's been over for a very long time, and he's just hanging on to it just for extra paychecks, and it's sad at this point.
True. But
again, everybody does it for money. That's the thing. I mean, they're doing it for money because
Ferguson will get paid more than Beneil too. He'll get paid more than Dariush because he has credit behind him.
And that's frustrating too, man. This guy's getting knocked the fuck out, and he's getting more money than the guy who knocked him out. Like that. Yeah, the pay system in UFC is kind of messed up too.
That's not RKJ. You got to admit that you don't think that Floyd Mayweather, or excuse me, it's a bad example. You don't think that Canelo Alvarez should get more money than Billy Joe Saunders? Even if Billy Joe Saunders knocked out Canelo Alvarez, you don't think that Canelo would deserve more money?
No, you're right in that. That's true.
I think
Canelo Alvarez had won all his fights. Tony Ferguson hasn't won a single fight in a very long time.
Sure. That's a point.
That's a good point. So.
One last, what was I going to say about Tony Ferguson? I cannot remember, so I'm just not going to say it. It doesn't matter as much. All right, okay, so we have already released our UFC 4 simulation done by none other than Easy Eric Santos. He does the Beneil Dariush versus Tony Ferguson fight, and he does Michael Chandler versus Charles Oliveira. And if you didn't hear what he said the results were of those fights, go watch them. It's only a 3 or 4 minute video. It's not a big deal. We show you the highlights essentially with some music in the background with Eric's commentary, which is hilarious at some points in this episode.
Especially the last fight. Yeah.
I'll tell you, the ending of the championship fight between Chandler and Oliveira is phenomenal. Okay, and we show you it in full. So go check that out. If you want to see our old videos, go check them out in our channel. And we continue to thank all the people watching our stuff, our new subscribers, everybody. Just, shout out to anybody on the UFC week that's watching this. We like to give you content, and we gave you boxing, pro wrestling, and MMA on this show. So RKJ, take it away and end this podcast for us.
Hey, really quickly, I want to get a shout out to the guy formerly known as Alex Zane, now known as Ari Sterling, for the WWE NXT 205 Live brand. Shout outs to him. We interviewed him a few years ago. He just had his first match on Friday, killed it, won his first matchup. You can check it out on our channel. Just like, comment, and subscribe. We were completely hammered, yet we somehow found a way to get a future WWE NXT superstar at an IHOP while my mouth is full of pancakes and delicious omelets. It was fantastic. I was spitting omelet and pancake everywhere, Nick.
And I was spitting up the alcohol I'd been drinking the whole night, and some of my fucking questions are hilarious. So go watch that. It was an unintended interview that ended up being one of our best. So go check that out. Like I said, next week we'll be talking more MMA, more boxing, more pro wrestling. We got a lot coming up. Obviously, we got Double or Nothing coming up at the end of May. We have the eventually the Logan Paul Floyd Mayweather fight. And maybe some announcements about potential events that we could be going to that we will be talking about with each other in the next coming weeks. So, but for this podcast, we're done. RKJ, I once again end this podcast on the correct note.
Hey, man, like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, raise a glass in the sky and salute the ring of the rose.